Member for Cochin Valley.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm happy to stand up to speak in favour of the motion today on proportional representation. We in BC right now have the opportunity to join over 90 democracies around the world, including 85% of OECD countries that operate under a proportional representation system. I think it's best to start on the problems to be solved, and we've heard a lot about votes counting and being counted. Let's get into that. At the riding level, because there are often 4, 5, 6 people on a ballot, the person elected to be MLA can be elected with as little as 35, 33, 32% of the vote, which means, say at 35%, 65% of people in the riding did not vote for that MLA. So yes, on election night, Honourable Speaker, their votes are counted, but after election night, they don't count towards anything in terms of what happens in the legislature. The 35% of voters who voted for the MLA who gets elected, their votes count towards what happens in the legislature. The 65% of voters who didn't vote for that person, their votes don't count. Next, at a provincial level, how does this translate those 35%, sometimes 40% thresholds at the riding level translates to 39, 40% of the popular vote will deliver to one party 100% of power, a majority of seats, and a 4-year mandate during which they can push through any legislation, any policy, and it won't matter what the opposition has to say because they don't need their votes in the House. One of the members spoke earlier about the fact that First Past the Post always delivers an opposition. In fact, Honourable Speaker, in 2001, 58% of the popular vote delivered 77 of 79 seats to the BC Liberal Party and no official opposition in this province for 4 years, which is bad for democracy, it's bad for the people of BC, and it in fact demonstrates First Past the Post does not always deliver an opposition. It does almost always deliver distorted results based on outcomes that mean that the minority of voters give 100% of power to one party. What else about the system isn't working? Costly policy lurches. One government comes in, undoes all of the policies of the previous government, costs us an enormous amount of money. We're seeing that play out very much right now in Ontario, where literally the contracts that are being cancelled are going to cost in the billions for the taxpayers of Ontario. We hear about this idea of deal-making, which I think can be a pretty cynical interpretation of what can happen under minority governments when parties and elected people come together, they find their common ground, they recognize that they have shared values, and they put forward policies and legislation that actually represent the desire and will of the majority of people that they represent. This is much better for democracy. I want to speak just briefly. We met with a group of teachers last week. There was a panel of us from all 3 parties. And these teachers echoed the comments that we hear all the time about what happens in this chamber, particularly during question period, and that they walked away feeling very cynical about the politics and governance in BC because they saw shouting and yelling. I think that what we want to foster is a healthier, kinder culture of politics, proportional representation that brings us to a place where political parties need to work across party lines, certainly fosters a better culture of politics. Finally, what does proportional representation offer us in terms of a long-term view of how governance and policies happen in this province? Well, under First Past the Post, what tends to happen is too much focus on swing riding and swing votes, not enough focus on long-term policies. In the world today, right now, in the wake of the IPCC report on what is going to be happening in our world over the next 20, 50, 100 years, devastating impacts from climate change, Honourable Speaker, that have been failed to be met, particularly by countries that are operating under First Past the Post, not representing what the will of the people want. In Canada and in BC, the majority of people want to see action on climate change. They have not seen that under First Past the Post government, and we're seeing an increasing number of provincial leaders across this country who are saying that climate change action is not a priority for them, and once they get elected in with a majority, they will be able to undermine and undo that action. We need change. We need it now in BC. I look forward to this, referendum, and I look forward to us modernizing our democracy. Thank you.